Seraphina's POV. The incident with Darius should have ruined the mood. I was ready to go home. The satisfaction of seeing Karma at work was enough entertainment for one night. But Callista had other plans. "It's not time to go home yet," she said, pulling my arm as I reached for my bag. "I have something interesting to do until late tonight." I raised an eyebrow. "What? Where do you want to go?" Her expression darkened slightly. "Kairos is sending me for training tomorrow, an intensive program that will keep me away for months." She forced a bright smile. "So tonight is my last night of freedom, and I want to spend it with my best friend." The honesty in her voice made me reconsider. Callista had always been there for me, especially during Darius's trials. I could spare a few more hours if she needed one last night of fun before being sent away by her controlling brother. "All right," I agreed, "but no more champagne bottles as weapons." She laughed, the tension melting from her shoulders. "Deal. But I have a surprise for you." Callista led me to another private room that seemed reserved beforehand. This room was more luxurious, with soft velvet sofas arranged around a small stage area. Soft ambient light illuminated everything in a warm golden glow. "Close your eyes," she commanded with a mischievous smile. I obeyed her orders, even though part of me was curious about what she had planned. The sound of doors opening and closing echoed, followed by footsteps and the scent of masculine perfume slowly approaching me. "Open your eyes now." When I did, my eyes widened in shock. A group of extremely handsome male models entered the room, each more captivating than the last. They wore tight black outfits, leaving little to the imagination, their muscular bodies on display. "Callista!" I hissed, feeling heat spread to my cheeks. "What is this?" "Entertainment," she said, sitting down on the sofa next to me with a satisfied smile. "You've been through a rough time with Darius. You deserve to enjoy what a real man is like." As if on cue, sensual music began to play from hidden speakers. The models moved with mesmerizing grace, their bodies swaying to the rhythm as they began their performance. Every movement was designed to highlight their impressive physiques, broad shoulders tapering to slim waists and abs that looked carved from marble. "Keep watching," Callista whispered, nudging me with her elbow. "Touch them. Feel those muscles." "I can't," I protested, though my eyes remained fixed on the scene before me. "Why not? You're single now. You can do whatever you want." One of the models, a tall, dark-haired man with piercing blue eyes, approached our sofa. His chest was bare, revealing perfectly sculpted muscles that seemed to ripple with every breath he took. "It's okay," he said softly, his voice like warm honey. "We don't bite unless you want us to." Callista almost pushed me forward. "Don't be shy, Seraphina. When else will you get a chance like this?" Hesitantly, I reached out, my fingers barely touching the model's stomach. His skin was warm and taut, the muscles beneath like steel wrapped in silk. Despite my embarrassment, I had to admit it felt good. Very good. Encouraged by my reaction, another model approached, this one even more captivating than the first. His golden hair shimmered in the light, and his green eyes seemed to pierce my soul. Without waiting for permission, he gently pressed my hand against his chest. "Your hands are so soft," he whispered, moving closer until I could feel his breath on my ear. "Maybe we could exchange numbers? Meet somewhere more private?" My heart raced. The suggestion hung between us, filled with meaning I wasn't sure I was ready to accept. Part of me was curious. When was the last time I did something spontaneous or exciting? But another part felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Before I could respond, the door to our private room suddenly swung open. The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees as Kairos filled the doorway. His calm expression was replaced by something dark and dangerous, his silver eyes flashing with emotions I couldn't identify. The air trembled with his alpha presence, so intense that everyone in the room instinctively stepped back. I felt like a deer caught in headlights, my hands still pressed against the model's chest. Guilt flooded me, though I didn't understand why. I hadn't done anything wrong, had I? "Everyone out, now." Kairos' voice was soft but deadly, yet it carried the unquestionable authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. The models didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed their things and left quickly, avoiding eye contact with the intimidating figure at the door. The blond man who had been flirting with me seemed to want to say something, but one look at Kairos' face made him change his mind. Callista stood up slowly, her usual confidence gone. Kairos, what are you doing here? I thought. Pack your things, he cut her off, his eyes never leaving me. You're leaving tomorrow morning, early. But, no arguments, Callista. You've had your fun. Go now. I watched as my friend reluctantly gathered her things. She shot me an apologetic glance before heading for the door, then paused. Be careful, she whispered, though I didn't know if the warning was for me or her brother. And then we were alone. Silence stretched between us, heavy and tense. Kairos stood near the door, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. When he finally moved, his steps were predatory, like a wolf stalking its prey. Why are you here? I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed the room with measured steps, each bringing him closer, until I was pushed into the corner of the sofa with nowhere to retreat. He was so close now that I could see the dark silver flecks in his eyes, smell the intoxicating scent of pine, and sense something unique about him. My heart was pounding so loudly that I was sure he could hear it. Without warning, he grabbed my hand, the same hand that had just touched the model moments earlier. His fingers were long and strong as they intertwined with mine, and I hissed at the contact. Is this what you want? He asked in a low, rough voice. Before I could ask what he meant, he pressed my palm against his stomach. The contact sent an electric current spreading throughout my body. Where the models looked impressive, Kairos was breathtakingly beautiful. His muscles felt like carved stone beneath my palm, warm, strong, and utterly masculine. But it wasn't just the physical sensation. Something else made my breath catch and my heart race. His empty hand rose to hold my face, tilting it so I was forced to look into his intense eyes. Am I not enough for you? He whispered, tracing my lower lip. The question hung between us, heavy with meaning I was only beginning to understand. This wasn't just about models or tonight's entertainment. This was about something deeper that had grown between us that I was too afraid to admit. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. How could I explain that I hadn't even realized what I was searching for until this moment? Kailos's POV. That night, I sat in the back corner of a fancy bar with Mark, sipping a glass of aged whiskey while discussing the increasingly tense situation with the Crimson Moon Pack. The dim lighting and hushed whispers of the patrons created the perfect atmosphere for our sensitive conversation. No suspicious movements yet, Mark reported, his voice barely audible. But our intelligence indicates they're planning something. The question is when and where they'll strike. I stirred the amber liquid in my glass, considering our options. What about border patrols? Doubled as you requested, but Kairos. Mark leaned forward, his expression serious. I still think sending Callista for training now might be too soon. She could be useful here. She could also be a target, I replied bluntly. My sister's safety is non-negotiable. Mark nodded, understanding the firmness in my voice. We both knew that family always came first. The Crimson Moon gang wouldn't hesitate to use her against me if they got the chance. Our conversation was interrupted when a female wolf approached our table. She was wearing very little, leaving nothing to the imagination, her movements deliberately seductive as she swayed her hips. Her long auburn hair fell over her shoulders, and her green eyes sparkled with a clear invitation. "Hello, Alpha," she hissed, leaning against our table in a way that accentuated her curves. "You look lonely. Can I keep you company?" I didn't even look up from my drink. I'd rather not. She persisted, running her fingers along the edge of the table. "Come on, don't be so stiff. I promise I can make you have fun." Alpha already said no, Mark interjected, but I could see the excitement in his eyes. When she finally left with a disappointed look, Mark laughed and shook his head. Most wolves would kill for that kind of attention. I shot him a sarcastic glance. Most wolves don't have standards. Standards, or are you still obsessed with Jessica? His question was casual, but I could hear the worry in his voice. Anger flashed so quickly that the glass in my hand cracked. Mark immediately noticed my reaction and raised his hands in surrender. Calm down. I was just asking." "Don't talk about it anymore," I warned, my voice soft and deadly. "She means nothing to me anymore. I consider her dead." I wouldn't be swayed by someone who had betrayed everything I believed in. The memory of lost loyalty still made the wolf inside me growl with anger and wounded pride. Mark wisely changed the subject to packing, but my attention wandered. The conversation felt monotonous. We'd been going over the same things repeatedly for the past few weeks. My mind was restless, craving action instead of endless planning. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through messages distractedly. There was one from Callista, sent about an hour ago. She often shared videos of her wild nights out to show off or make me worry. As her older brother, I tried not to interfere too much in her social life, but I couldn't help hoping she'd eventually find someone and settle down. But when I opened the video, every muscle in my body tensed. The footage showed Callista entering what looked like a private club room, but she wasn't alone. Seraphina was there, looking stunning in a black dress that hugged her curves. The wolf inside me stirred at the sight of her, but that feeling quickly turned to pure anger as I watched the scene unfold. Male models, half-naked male models paraded around like peacocks, flaunting their bodies for my mate's entertainment. My mate. The thought hit me like a bolt of lightning, but I didn't have time to analyze it. On the screen, I watched in horror as one of them approached Seraphina, saw him take her hand and press it against his chest. The intimate gesture blurred my vision with rage. The wolf inside me roared, a primal sound full of anger and territorial claim. How dare they touch what was mine? How dare they even look at her with those hungry eyes? Kairos, Mark's voice echoed from afar. What's wrong? You look like you're about to change. I was already standing, the chair scraping roughly across the floor. I have to go. Go where? Kairos, what? But I was already moving, pushing through the crowded bar with restrained violence. Anyone smart enough to recognize an alpha on the brink of losing control quickly stepped aside. The drive to the club was a blur of city lights and grinding teeth. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my skin protested. Every second that passed was another second those bastards had what was mine. I didn't bother with manners or proper entry procedures when I arrived at the club. I stepped past the bouncer with such authority that he didn't even have time to stop me. The scent of her perfume led me to a private room upstairs. I didn't knock. The door burst open under my kick, echoing through the room like a gunshot. The sight before me confirmed my worst fears. Seraphina sat on the plush sofa, her hands pressed against the chest of a young man with golden hair who was leaning in to whisper in her ear. The beast within me roared for blood. But I forced myself to stay calm. Almost. When the moment came, my voice was silent but deadly, containing enough alpha command to make everyone in the room instinctively submit. Everyone out, now. The models scrambled to gather their things and flee, their survival instincts finally kicking in. This was good. They had to be afraid. The golden-haired boy who had touched my partner hesitated for a moment, as if he were foolish enough to argue. One look at my face changed his mind. He almost ran for the door. Callista stood up slowly, her usual confidence gone. She knew she had crossed the line. Kairos, what are you doing here? I thought. Pack your things. I cut her off, my eyes fixed on Seraphina. You're leaving tomorrow morning, early. But... No arguments, Callista. You've had enough fun. Now go. My sister reluctantly gathered her things, casting an apologetic glance at Seraphina before heading for the door. She stopped beside me. Be careful, she whispered, though I wasn't sure if the warning was meant for me or for Seraphina. And then we were alone. I stayed near the door for a moment, letting the wolf inside me calm down a little. The scent of another male still lingered in the air, making my teeth grind. But beneath it all was Seraphina's intoxicating aroma, jasmine and moonlight, with a touch of something uniquely hers. Why are you here? She asked, her voice barely audible. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slowly crossed the room, enjoying how her eyes widened as I approached. She pressed herself into the corner of the sofa, but there was nowhere for her to go. Perfect. I stopped when I was close enough to see the golden flecks in her dark eyes, close enough to hear her rapid heartbeat. The scent of her arousal was faint but unmistakable, mingling with her nervousness in a combination that made the wolf inside me growl with satisfaction. Without warning, I reached out and captured the hand that had touched the bastard's chest. Her fingers were smooth in mine, soft and warm, perfect. Is this what you want? I asked, pressing her palm against my stomach. The contact sent an electric current through our bodies. I could see it in the way her breath caught and feel it in the subtle tremors coursing through her body. Her hands were small on my chest, but their heat burned through the fabric of my shirt. I lifted the other hand to hold her face, tilting it so she was forced to look into my eyes. Her skin felt like silk under my thumb as I traced her lower lip. "Am I not enough for you?" The question came out rougher than I intended, filled with more vulnerability than I wanted to show. But as I looked at her, seeing how her pupils dilated, her lips parted slightly, and how she seemed to melt under my touch, I realized something that should have scared me. I wanted her to fall in love with me. But somewhere along the way, I had fallen in love with her just as deeply. That thought should have made me step back and remember my cold plan for revenge. But instead, it made me want to pull her closer, kiss her lips, and show her what she was missing with those weak men. But I forced myself to stay calm. This was about making her want me, not the other way around. Even if the line was getting blurrier by the second, Seraphina's POV. When Kailos's lips touched mine, my whole world spun. The kiss was completely different from the hesitant, almost obligatory kisses I had given Darius during our engagement. This was sincere, loving, and deeply possessive. The yearning in my heart didn't want to let it go. I felt as if I were flying, floating until my knees grew weak. His scent took my breath away, intoxicating me with its blend of cedar and wine. His touch reminded me of that night, our first intimate and irresistible encounter, just like today. My heart was pounding so hard that every nerve in my body trembled. His hands explored every inch of my body. The warmth of his touch made my blood race, and I loved it. Damn, maybe I was already addicted to every touch of his skin. I wanted it again, desperately. My hands clenched his shirt, pulling him closer as I kissed him back with equal passion. It felt right in a way I had never experienced before. Natural, inevitable. But as I was completely lost in the sensation, he suddenly pulled away. I stared at him in confusion, my breath coming in gasps. His silver eyes were dark with desire, but there was something else, conflict, maybe even regret. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough as he stepped back. "I shouldn't have. Maybe I crossed the line." His words hit me like a splash of cold water, clearing the fog in my head. Crossed the line? After a kiss like that, he was worried about crossing the line. "You don't need to apologize," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady despite the disappointment weighing on my chest. "Things like this happen." That was a lie, of course. A kiss like that didn't just happen. It came from weeks of tension building up, from attraction simmering beneath the surface, whether I wanted to admit it or not. But I could play along if he wanted to pretend this was nothing. Kairos pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "I'll have my driver take you home," he said without looking at me. "It's late." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the private room, with the lingering scent of his cologne and the taste of his lips still on mine. I sat there for a few minutes, trying to process what had just happened. The way he kissed me, the intensity in his eyes, none of it suggested he was acting on impulse. But then he pulled away as though I had burned him, apologized and sent me home as if I were a burden to be discarded. The mixed signals were making my head spin. When the driver arrived, I gathered what was left of my dignity and allowed myself to be escorted to the waiting car. The ride back to Night Vale Pack House was silent, giving me too much time to replay every moment of the night. When I stepped through the front door, I had almost convinced myself I was overreacting. Kairos was an alpha. He was probably used to getting any woman he wanted whenever he wanted her. The fact that I had responded so eagerly probably just amused him. That thought made my cheeks flush with embarrassment. I was almost at my room when Callista appeared in the doorway. She was still wearing her club clothes, but her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "How was it?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. "What happened after I left? You two look like you were about to eat each other." "Nothing happened," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. Callista's eyes narrowed. "Seraphina, I know my brother, and I know the look he gets when he wants something. Something happened." I sighed, knowing she wouldn't let it go until she got an answer. "He kissed me. That's all." "That's all?" She looked shocked. My very controlled and unemotional brother kissed you, and you think that doesn't mean anything?" He stopped, I admitted reluctantly. In the middle of the kiss, apologized, and sent me home with his driver. Callista stared at me intently. Then her expression turned almost suspicious. "He stopped? In the middle?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Huh." She tapped her finger on her lips thoughtfully. "That's unusual." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Kairos isn't known for holding back when it comes to women he's interested in. If he stopped, there must be a reason." She paused, studying my face carefully. "Unless, oh my God, is he impotent?" "Callista!" I hissed, my cheeks burning. "No, of course not." The words slipped out before I could stop them, and I immediately regretted it. Callista's eyebrows shot up to her hairline. "Oh, really? And how exactly do you know that?" I turned away, busying myself with hanging up my jacket. He doesn't." Luckily, Callista seemed to realize she'd gone too far. Okay, I'll stop. But Seraphina?" I turned back to her. "My brother never does anything without a reason. If he stopped, it's not because he doesn't want you." After she left, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her words echoing in my mind. What possible reason could he have for pulling away? And more importantly, why did I care so much? The next morning, as I ate eggs, my phone rang. My father's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with a smile. "Good morning, Dad." "Good morning, dear. I called to see how you're doing. When are you planning to come home?" It was a simple question, one I should have answered easily. But as I opened my mouth to respond, I felt someone's gaze on me. I turned and saw Kairos staring at me intensely from across the table. His silver eyes were fixed on mine with an intensity that made my heart race. Those eyes seemed to be asking me something I couldn't quite understand, and suddenly all my thoughts flew out of my mind. I stammered, completely forgetting what my father had asked. There are some things I need to take care of here first. Seraphina, are you okay? You sound distracted." "I'm fine, Dad. I have to go. I'll call you later, okay?" I hung up before he could answer, my pulse pounding. Across the table, Kairos was still staring at me with that unreadable look. Back in my room, I paced back and forth, trying to untangle my jumbled thoughts. Should I go home? Part of me wanted to. The comfort of my familiar family seemed so much easier than facing the complicated mess here. But another part of me, the part I didn't want to look at too closely, wasn't ready to leave. Despite the confusion and conflicting signals and the way Kairos had pushed me away last night, I wanted to stay. It was ridiculous. I barely knew him, and what I did know suggested he was exactly the complicated, emotional man I should avoid. A soft knock interrupted my internal debate. "Come in," I called, thinking it would be Callista. Instead, Kairos entered, and my breath caught. His casual breakfast clothes were gone. He wore a dark gray suit fitting him as if it had been tailored, which it probably had. His dark hair was neatly combed, and he looked as if he had stepped out of a magazine. "I want to apologize," he said, closing the door behind him, "for last night." "I told you, there's no need." "There is." He stepped closer, and I caught that intoxicating scent again. "I handled that badly. You didn't deserve to be treated like that." I wanted to argue, to insist it didn't matter, but the words caught in my throat. "I want to make it up to you," he continued. "I booked a room at the Moonlight Hotel for tonight, dinner. Just the two of us." The Moonlight Hotel was the most exclusive restaurant in town, and a table usually required months-long waiting lists and special connections. Getting a reservation so quickly said everything about his influence. "I don't know." I started, but he stepped closer, so close that I had to duck my head to meet his eyes. "Please," he said softly, "let me do this right." Something in his voice, something almost vulnerable, made my resolve waver. I knew this was dangerous territory, but seeing that genuine regret in his eyes, I felt weak. "It depends," I heard myself say. "It depends on how handsome you are tonight." A slow, confident smile spread across his face, transforming him from handsome to breathtaking. "I won't let you down," he promised, his voice low and rough in my ear. And as he turned to leave, I had the unsettling sense that I was getting caught up in something much bigger than I ever imagined. I didn't know whether my decision was right or wrong. Even though yesterday he had shown signs that things weren't going well, leaving me like that, I had been dismissed just like that. And now he had come back, asking for another chance. Seraphina's POV. I was relaxing on the sofa that afternoon when an Omega servant gently knocked on my door. When I opened it, he stood there holding the most beautiful bouquet of cornflowers I had ever seen. Dozens of flowers in shades of golden yellow and cream, their delicate petals catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. "These are for you, Miss Seraphina," he said shyly. "They were just delivered." My heart raced as I took the flowers, inhaling their sweet, delicate scent. Cornflowers had always been my favorite. Their simple beauty and cheerful colors always lifted my mood. But how could someone here know that? I searched the flowers for a card and found a small, elegant note between the stems. "May these flowers brighten your day." Suddenly my phone rang. Kairos' name appeared on the screen, and I felt the familiar thud of my heart in my chest. "Hello," I answered, trying to sound casual despite the smile that almost broke through. "Did you receive the flowers?" His warm, hesitant voice surprised me. I looked at the beautiful bouquet in my hands. "They're nice. Pretty good, I guess." I tried to sound indifferent, but I couldn't stop the smile. "How did you know cornflowers are my favorite flowers?" There was a brief pause before he answered. "I notice the important things." That simple statement made my heart race, but before I could answer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. "I have to go," I said quickly, ending the call just as Callista appeared in the doorway. Her green eyes immediately fell on the large bouquet in my hands, and a mischievous smile spread across her face. Well, what's this?" She entered my room without permission, circling me like a predator who had found interesting prey. "These are beautiful. Who's your secret admirer?" "They're just flowers," I said, trying to distract her while carefully arranging them in a vase on my dressing table. "Just flowers?" Callista laughed, flopping onto my bed dramatically. "Seraphina, these are imported cornflowers. Do you know how much they cost? And look at the arrangement. It's from Moonlight Florals, the most exclusive florist in town. Someone must have spent a fortune on this." I felt the heat rise to my neck. "It could have been anyone." "Anyone could have," she said, but the tone of her voice suggested she knew better. "But I'd bet on someone with good taste, deep pockets, and a special interest in making you smile." She studied my face closely. "You look radiant, by the way. Whoever sent this must have hit their mark." I turned away to hide my expression, but Callista was too perceptive. "Wait a minute," she said, sitting up straight suddenly. "I thought you were supposed to leave for the border today. Why are you still here?" Callista's expression changed, becoming slightly embarrassed. "About that, Kairos canceled my trip." "Canceled? Why?" She shrugged, but I knew there was more to it. "He said he's in a bad mood and doesn't want me to travel. There's an increased security threat." She waved her hand dismissively. "You know he's overly protective, but honestly, I think he wants an excuse to keep me here." "Keep you here for what?" "To watch you." Callista's smile widened again. "My brother's been acting weird lately, forgetting things, moody, and asking about your preferences and habits. And now mysterious, expensive flowers show up at your door? The pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together." My phone vibrated with a text message, and I glanced at the screen to see Kairos' name. 7 p.m. at the hotel. Don't be late. My eyes widened as I recalled our conversation from yesterday. Amidst the confusion and conflicting signals, I had completely forgotten that I had agreed to have dinner with him. "What's wrong?" Callista asked, noticing my expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Ah, it's nothing." Callista furrowed her brows in disbelief, but then she nodded. That night, I was once again torn between two dresses spread out on the bed. I couldn't decide which one to choose. I turned around in front of the mirror several times after putting on a plain, white dress with a low neckline, then shook my head with pursed lips, feeling that it wasn't right. I took off the dress and tried the other one. This time, it was a maroon dress with a slit from the knee to the thigh. The neckline wasn't low this time, covering my chest but still giving off a sexy vibe. I smiled contentedly. I'd chosen the right one. Taking a deep breath, I descended to the main floor of the warehouse. The evening light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the shiny marble floor. I had arrived early, a habit I used to avoid rushing, so I took a moment to calm myself. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, and I turned to see Kairos approaching. The sight took my breath away. He was wearing a black suit that fit him perfectly, accentuating his broad shoulders and slim build. The dark fabric made his silver eyes seem almost glittering, and his black hair was perfectly styled. He looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine, sophisticated, powerful, and extremely handsome. I stared at him, feeling my composure slip away. This was supposed to be a casual dinner, but he looked like he was getting ready for the red carpet. "It's just dinner," I said, my voice sounding a little breathless. "Why are you dressed like this?" Kairos stopped in front of me, his silver eyes softening as he looked at me. There was something different about his expression tonight, softer, more open than I had ever seen. "Because it is a date," he said, his voice soft and warm. "With you." My heart was beating so loudly that I was sure he could hear it. The quiet intensity in his words made my knees feel weak. A date. With me. Seraphina's POV. We both got into the car, and the man smiled at me and struck up a conversation. He asked me about my plans, what I wanted to do, and so on. His voice sounded relaxed, but I could sense his sincerity. "So, what are your plans after graduation?" he asked, glancing at me occasionally while keeping his eyes on the road. I paused for a moment, considering his question. "To be honest, I haven't thought that far ahead. I'm just focused on finishing my studies." Kairos nodded slowly. "What if I offered you something interesting?" He stopped at a red light and turned to face me fully. "Working at my company." My eyes widened in surprise at the sudden offer. "What? Kairos, that..." "Just think about it," he cut in with a warm smile. "My company is one of the strongest in North America. The experience you'll gain will be invaluable." My mind was spinning. Working at Kairos's company would be incredibly beneficial, not just for me personally, but also for our pack. The connections and experience I could bring back would strengthen our position. "I'll think about it seriously," I finally replied. His smile grew wider. "That's all I ask." Shortly after, we arrived at the Moonlight Hotel. The luxurious building towered above us, warm light streaming from every window. Kairos handed the car keys to the valet, who immediately approached. He walked around the car, his steps firm but calm, and in an instant, he opened the door for me. The smile on his lips made me feel special. I felt very special in front of him. Without hesitation, I reached out my hand, and our skin touched with warmth. The warmth of his hand and his grip sent an odd sensation through my entire body. There was a small tremor in my chest, telling me that he was being very romantic with me. Was this the kind of attention I needed? It felt like I was experiencing such sincerity for the first time in my life. Our hands remained intertwined as we entered the hotel, walking side by side with the breeze caressing my face, cool but not cold, because Kairos was beside me, able to regulate the temperature around me. When we entered the elevator, our hands remained intertwined. I glanced at him and tried to pull my hand away, but he tightened his grip, making me flinch even though he did it gently. I stared at him sharply, but he only responded with a small laugh that made his silver eyes sparkle. He seemed to be in a very good mood tonight. "Kairos," I whispered, realizing we weren't alone in the elevator. He replied casually, as if there was nothing strange about his behavior. Before I could protest further, the elevator doors opened, and the sight that greeted me took my breath away. The entire restaurant was decorated perfectly to my taste. Fresh cornflowers were scattered throughout the room, soothing aromatherapy candles were lit, and warm lighting created a romantic yet simple atmosphere. Everything was so perfect, as if someone had studied every little detail of my taste. "Kairos," I whispered, moved. "This all?" "Do you like it?" he asked, and for the first time that night, I heard a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "I love it," I answered honestly, unable to hide how touched I was. The dinner was absolutely delightful. Every dish served was delicious and presented perfectly. More importantly, the conversation with Kairos flowed so naturally. He told me about his experiences in business, while I shared about my studies and life in my pack. Talking to him made me truly happy. There was a side of Kairos I had never seen before, more relaxed, more open, and surprisingly very attentive to the little details that made me feel comfortable. In the middle of our warm conversation, my phone suddenly rang. Callista's name appeared on the screen. I gestured to Kairos and said, Sorry, it's Callista. He nodded understandingly and continued eating calmly while I answered the call. Hello, Callista, I greeted her. Seraphina, where are you? I'm bored at home. Want to go out? There's a new club downtown that's supposed to be great. Guilt washed over me. I'm having dinner with a friend. A friend? Callista's voice sounded curious. Who's the friend? Why didn't I know about this? Ah, a friend from college, I lied, glancing at Kairos, who was trying to hold back a smile. But if you want to go out, I can join you later. Really? Okay, I'll send you the address. Club Velvet in Manhattan. See you there. After hanging up, Kairos immediately offered, I'll drive you there after this. No need, I can take a taxi. Seraphina, he cut me off, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. I invited you to dinner, so it's my responsibility to make sure you get home safely. After dinner, we went down to the lobby. Kairos took my hand again. This time, I didn't try to pull away. For some reason, his grip felt right. The trip to Club Velvet didn't take long. The exclusive club was located in one of Manhattan's skyscrapers, with the entrance surrounded by a line of glamorous people. When Kairos' car stopped in front of the VIP entrance, I tried to get out, but the door was still locked. Kairos? I asked, confused. Suddenly, he leaned his face toward me. The distance between our faces became so close that I could smell the calming scent of his masculine perfume. My breath caught when he raised his hand and gently brushed the corner of my lips with his thumb. Your lipstick is smudged, he whispered in a hoarse, soft voice. The soft touch of his thumb on the corner of my lips sent a jolt of electricity coursing through my body. My heart was beating so fast, I was sure he could hear it. His silver eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Thank you, I mumbled, my face burning red. He smiled, a different smile than usual. It was softer, more personal. Be careful inside. If anything happens, call me right away, he said as he opened the door. I quickly ran out of the car, my heart still pounding and my face still feeling hot. As I turned to wave goodbye, Kairos was still staring at me from inside the car with an expression I couldn't read. Only after I disappeared into the club did his luxury car slowly drive away, leaving me with mixed feelings and questions I dared not answer. Seraphina's POV. As soon as I entered the luxurious VIP room with its dim lighting and soft music, Callista approached me with a curious look. Seraphina, you finally came, she exclaimed as she hugged me. But a second later, she stepped back and stared at my face with raised eyebrows. Why are you so red? Do you have a fever? I stammered, searching for a plausible excuse. That. I bumped into the taxi door when I got out, so my face is a little red, I lied, touching my cheek, which still felt warm. Callista was still staring at me suspiciously. That's strange. You're not usually so clumsy. She pulled me to sit on the comfortable sofa. By the way, who did you have dinner with? You look different tonight. Are you secretly dating someone? My heart was pounding. No, it's just a friend. A friend from college, I replied as neutrally as possible. Callista's green eyes narrowed, staring at me with a look that made me feel like I was being interrogated. Seraphina, I've known you long enough. You must be hiding something. Your eyes are sparkling strangely. Your cheeks are still flushed, and you look happy. This can't just be a regular dinner with a college friend. Before I could answer, the VIP room door opened. A man walked in with a wide smile, and behind him was someone who took my breath away, the mysterious man who was none other than Kairos. Kairos, he's with Mark? Callista's voice sounded very surprised. Ladies, Mark shouted, your night is about to get a lot more exciting. Kailos's POV. Worried that last night's incident would repeat itself, when Seraphina almost got into trouble at the club, I decided to invite Mark to join Seraphina's group at the best club owned by his group. At least this way, I could make sure she was safe without looking too overprotective. Mark teased me the whole way there about how protective I was of Seraphina. Kairos, you're like her personal bodyguard, he said with a chuckle. Admit it, you're in love. I didn't deny it, and the wolf inside me showed an increasingly possessive attitude toward Seraphina. Every time I imagined her in danger or with another man, anger surged in my chest. When we entered the VIP room, Mark loudly commented on how beautiful the girls were. Without hesitation, he asked Callista, "Can I join you girls tonight?" Callista glanced at me briefly, perhaps realizing that our arrival wasn't a coincidence, before smiling and nodding. Of course, the more the merrier. I naturally took a seat next to Seraphina. Seeing her tense up slightly as I approached made me feel both satisfied and amused. Her reaction to my presence was always so honest and adorable. "You guys just got here?" Seraphina asked, trying to sound casual. "Mark invited us," I replied briefly, my eyes fixed on her still slightly flushed face. Suddenly, my ears picked up a conversation between Callista and Seraphina about Darius. The name made my jaw tighten, and the wolf inside me stirred unhappily. "So what about Darius?" Callista asked teasingly. "If he wants to come back to you, would you take him back?" Seraphina shook her head in disgust. "Callista, I wouldn't choose Darius even if he were the last werewolf on Earth." That answer made me, and the wolf inside me, very happy. A small smile spread across my lips, and I felt a heavy weight lift from my chest. I looked at Seraphina, and our eyes met. My heart raced when I saw her beautiful brown eyes. There was a spark there, maybe confusion, maybe attraction, that made me want to pull her into a corner of the room and... "Seraphina!" Callista's voice broke my reverie. "I'm still not satisfied with your answer about dinner companions. You must be hiding something." Seraphina looked confused again, and I couldn't resist teasing her a little. But before I could open my mouth, Mark suddenly leaned toward Seraphina with a charming smile and a very familiar tone. "Seraphina, you look beautiful tonight. That maroon dress really suits your eyes." My gaze immediately turned cold, and I stared at Mark with a look that could kill. He knew exactly what he was doing, teasing me by being too familiar with Seraphina. "Thank you," Seraphina replied with a polite but not very enthusiastic smile. Mark grinned, clearly enjoying my reaction. "How about we play Uno with a penalty for the loser? It'll be more exciting." "Great idea," exclaimed Callista. "I love games with penalties." Everyone seemed to agree, but I noticed that Seraphina looked hesitant and a little troubled. Didn't she know how to play Uno? Her expression showed adorable uncertainty, and I had to resist the urge to offer my help right away. Seraphina's POV. Mark enthusiastically pulled a set of Uno cards out of his jacket pocket. It seemed he had planned to play tonight. "Okay, the rules are simple. The loser of each round has to pay a penalty. You can choose between drinking 2 shots or doing a dare we give you." I nodded, trying to grasp the rules Mark explained so quickly. To be honest, I wasn't very skilled at card games like this. In our pack, free time was usually spent practicing or doing outdoor activities. But I didn't want to ruin the already enjoyable atmosphere. The game began, and just as I feared, my strategy fell apart. While the others seemed so skilled at managing their cards and timing, I could only play as best as I could. Sure enough, in the first round, I lost badly. "Wow, Seraphina's the first," Callista exclaimed joyfully. "Now choose, 2 shots of vodka or a dare from us?" I glanced at the shot glasses already prepared on the table, then looked at the expectant faces around me. "Dare," I replied, though I was a little worried about what they might challenge me to do. Mark and Callista whispered to each other for a moment, then Mark grinned widely. "All right, here it goes. You have to eat one end of a pocky stick while one of us eats the other end. Keep going until one of you gives up, or," he paused with a mischievous smile, "until you meet in the middle." My face flushed. "A pocky game? Seriously?" "So, who wants to be Seraphina's partner?" Callista asked, looking back and forth between Mark and Kairos. My eyes instinctively turned to Kairos, the only person here I felt somewhat familiar with, even though our relationship was still confusing. But his expression was completely unreadable. His face was blank, and his silver eyes stared at me without revealing a hint of what he was thinking. I considered just drinking. 2 shots might be easier than this potentially embarrassing situation. My hand reached for the wine glass on the table. But before I could do so, Kairos suddenly snatched the glass from my hand with a quick motion. "You can't drink too much," he said in a flat but firm tone. Mark immediately handed us a box of Pocky. "Well, Kairos is volunteering. Come on, take one." With a calm motion, Kairos took one of the chocolate sticks and leaned toward me. His silver eyes stared intently into mine, and suddenly the entire room felt silent, though I knew the others were starting to cheer and make noise. "Seraphina," he whispered, his voice meant only for me, "you don't have to do this if you don't want to. But now all eyes were on us, and backing out would look really strange. Nervously, I nodded and bit the end of another pocky stick, not daring to look up at his face, which was already so close. "Start!" Mark shouted enthusiastically. I began to bite slowly, my heart pounding so loudly that I was sure it could be heard over the club music. With each bite, the chocolate stick grew shorter, and Kailos's face drew closer to mine. The scent of his cologne grew stronger. I could feel his warm breath brushing against my skin. My heart was beating so fast I felt dizzy. My eyes stayed lowered, unable to meet his gaze directly, but I could feel the intensity of his stare never leaving me. As time passed, the chocolate stick got shorter. The distance between our lips was probably only a few centimeters. My breath sped up, and just as I felt his breath touch my lips, panic struck. I pulled away suddenly. The pocky stick broke, and part of it fell to the floor. "Whoa!" Mark cheered loudly, clapping his hands. "Almost! You guys almost made it to the last base!" The others cheered and laughed, but I couldn't lift my head. My face felt like it was on fire. It must have been bright red. I stared intently at the floor, feeling Kailos's gaze still on me, even though the game was over. Okay, the game continues," Callista exclaimed as she shuffled the cards again. "Second round." As the cards were dealt for the next round, a club staff member suddenly entered our VIP room. He approached Mark with a slightly tense expression. "Excuse me, Mr. Mark," he said politely. "Someone is looking for you in the lobby. He said his name was Darius, and he was from the Blue Ridge Pack. He's with 2 other people and said it's urgent business." My blood instantly froze. Darius? Here? From the staff member's description, I was certain it was indeed Darius. The Alpha Wolf had recovered quickly. Just yesterday, he was lying in a hospital bed with severe injuries, and now he was already roaming the city, making business deals. Mark didn't seem enthusiastic about meeting them. His expression changed from relaxed to slightly annoyed. "Darius? At this hour? What does he want?" But then, Kairos suddenly spoke in a calm tone that carried something I couldn't identify. "Let's meet them." Everyone in the room immediately turned to look at him, including me. What was he planning? Why did he want to meet Darius? I stared at Kairos with a questioning look, but his expression went back to a mask that gave away nothing. His jaw tightened slightly, and there was a flash of something in his silver eyes that made me feel uneasy. "Kairos," I whispered, unsure if this was a good idea. Kailos's POV. I didn't do this to give Darius a chance. Quite the opposite. I wanted him to understand the consequences of betraying Seraphina. And more importantly, I wanted to see how Seraphina would react to her former fiancé. Were there still feelings left? Had she truly moved on as she claimed? The wolf inside me growled impatiently. It wanted to show dominance, to let Darius know that Seraphina was now under our protection. But the rational part of me knew this wasn't about marking territory. It was about testing how strong Seraphina was now. "All right," Mark said hesitantly. "But if they start causing trouble, I'll have security escort them out." A few minutes later, the VIP room door opened and Darius entered with 2 others. The first was a man of average height with blonde hair, probably the beta of his pack. The second, Vesper. Of course, she came along. Darius's face changed drastically the moment his eyes caught sight of Seraphina. He clearly hadn't expected to find her here, especially in such a relaxed atmosphere. His eyes widened, and for a moment I saw something like regret flash across his face. Vesper, on the other hand, immediately showed a clear expression of dislike. She glanced at Seraphina from head to toe with a condescending look, but I could sense jealousy behind her attitude. "Please sit down," Mark said, pointing to the empty sofa across from us. His tone was polite but cold. Clearly he wasn't happy about their arrival. I felt Seraphina's body tense up beside me as Darius and Vesper took their seats. But then, something extraordinary happened. She took a deep breath and calmed down. With an elegant movement, she lifted her wine glass and sipped it casually, as if the presence of her former fiancé didn't affect her at all. Even more than that, she treated them as if they weren't there. Her eyes didn't glance in Darius's direction. There was no tremor in her hands, no sign that she was disturbed. Her composure and class impressed me. "So," Mark began in a businesslike tone, "what brings you here in the middle of the night, Darius?" We want to discuss the possibility of a partnership between the Blue Ridge Pack and the Stoneheart Pack, Darius replied, but his eyes occasionally glanced toward Seraphina. There are some border territories we could manage together. When Mark asked who Vesper was, Darius introduced her with an overly enthusiastic tone. This is Vesper, my girlfriend and personal assistant. She's been very helpful with pack matters. Vesper smiled sweetly, too sweetly, while pressing herself closer to Darius. Nice to meet all of you, she said, but her eyes deliberately avoided Seraphina. I exchanged glances with Mark. We both knew the game that was being played here. Darius was trying to show off his new happiness in front of Seraphina, while Vesper was trying to show that she had won the man who once belonged to Seraphina. Mark got the message I sent him with my eyes and started urging them to drink. If you want to talk business, let's at least make the atmosphere more relaxed first. Our bartender has the best whiskey collection. I don't, Darius started to refuse. Come on, Mark cut in, already pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. It's our tradition. No business is discussed without drinking together first. Watching Darius and Vesper reluctantly down a few shots while Seraphina occasionally glanced at them with a mocking look, which gave me a sense of satisfaction. There was no trace of affection left in Seraphina's gaze, only scorn and perhaps a hint of disgust. Even when Darius tried to speak to her directly, "Seraphina, you look good," his voice trembled slightly, whether from alcohol or nervousness. Seraphina merely raised an eyebrow elegantly. "Thank you," she said flatly, then returned her focus to her conversation with Callista as if Darius didn't exist. Cold, brutal, perfect. Vesper looked increasingly uncomfortable with Seraphina's indifference. She might have expected drama, tears, or at least an emotional confrontation, but what she got was total indifference, more painful than anger. "You know," Vesper finally couldn't take it anymore and tried to attack. "I heard you moved here because of issues with your old pack. Must be tough, starting over from scratch, right?" Seraphina slowly put down her glass and stared at Vesper with a gaze that could freeze blood. "Starting over?" She smiled thinly. "Honey, I didn't start over. I just threw away the trash from my life, and now my life is much cleaner." Vesper flinched, and even Darius looked like he'd just been slapped. Mark couldn't hold back his laughter. "Damn, Seraphina. That was brutal." The atmosphere grew increasingly awkward. Darius and Vesper, who were already a bit drunk, began to look like they were searching for an excuse to leave. They might have thought they could come here to disturb Seraphina's peace, but the opposite had happened. "Maybe we should." Darius started to stand up, but stumbled slightly. "Yeah, maybe you guys should go," Mark said in a tone that was no longer polite. "It's late, and you two don't look like you're in any condition to discuss serious business." Shortly after, Darius and Vesper, who were drunk, left sheepishly. Vesper even almost tripped over her own dress as she left. Mark laughed out loud as soon as the door closed. "Oh my God, that was epic! Seraphina, you were amazing just now. Trash out of my life. Classic." I looked at Seraphina, who was still calm, sipping her wine as if nothing had happened. No tremors, no tears, no signs that meeting her ex-fiancé had affected her. She was no longer the girl who had cried over Darius. And that made me very happy. The wolf inside me growled contentedly. She was strong. She deserved to be our Luna. "Are you okay?" I asked softly, even though I already knew the answer. Seraphina looked at me with clear, calm eyes. Why wouldn't I be? They're just 2 strangers who happened to pass by. And in that moment, I knew. She had truly moved on. Darius no longer had any power over her. And maybe, just maybe, there was room in her heart for someone new. For me. Author's POV. Vesper was almost thrown against the bathroom wall when a wave of nausea hit her. The sound of vomiting echoed in the small room, while the world around her spun like an out-of-control top. The alcohol Mark had forced them to drink last night was now taking its revenge. "Vesper, are you okay?" Darius's worried voice came from outside the bathroom door. She couldn't answer. Her stomach was still contracting, expelling the last remnants of expensive whiskey that tasted like poison in her throat. Her head pounded, and the image of Seraphina's calm, mocking face kept spinning in her mind. After what felt like an eternity, Vesper finally managed to stand up, trembling. Her legs could barely support her as she opened the bathroom door. Darius caught her just as she was about to fall. The man's face was pale and filled with regret. "I'm sorry," he whispered, supporting Vesper's body onto the bed. "I brought you there. I put you through this." Darius's eyes were red, either from the remaining alcohol or overwhelming emotion. He sat on the edge of the bed, head bowed. "I'm such a terrible alpha, aren't I? Look what happened to our pack. Look how they looked at us last night." Vesper grimaced as she remembered the condescending stares from the people in the VIP room, especially from Seraphina. She hadn't even bothered to hide her disgust. "Don't say that." Vesper forced herself to speak softly, even though her throat still felt raw. She reached for Darius's hand and held it. "You're still the best alpha I've ever known. These are just tough times. All packs go through them." Darius lifted his head and looked at Vesper with teary eyes. "But what if it's all my fault? What if I shouldn't have left Seraphina?" The question pierced Vesper's heart like a dagger, but she didn't let her expression change. Instead, she pulled Darius into a tight embrace. "Shh! Don't think like that," she whispered, stroking Darius's back. "We've made our choices, and I'll always be with you, no matter what happens." Darius hugged her back desperately, as if Vesper was the only thing keeping him sane. "I love you," he murmured in Vesper's ear. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Vesper smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Inside, she sneered bitterly. "Love me?" She wanted to laugh out loud. If she had a better choice, if there was a stronger alpha, a more prosperous pack, she would have left the Blue Ridge pack long ago. Who would have thought they'd fall from glory so quickly? Once, the Blue Ridge pack had been one of the most respected in the region. Now, they were like beggars, pleading for business partnerships in the middle of the night. Was all of this because of Seraphina? Vesper remembered how the girl had sat there calmly last night, as if their presence was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Her gaze occasionally flickered with subtle but deadly mockery. The way she had said, "I'm just getting rid of the trash in my life," with such a cold and elegant tone. It was all because she was born special, Vesper thought bitterly. Noble blood, extraordinary powers, and now, it seemed, the protection of the Night Vale pack. Of course, it was easy for her to be arrogant. But one day, Vesper promised silently as she continued to stroke Darius's trembling back, "I will destroy you, Seraphina. I will make you feel what it's like to lose everything." Meanwhile, Darius couldn't stop thinking about Seraphina. Since their engagement was broken off, she had changed so drastically. Not only did she look more beautiful and radiant, there was something completely different about the way she carried herself. Once, Seraphina had always looked at him with eyes full of love. She had always tried to please him, always worried about his feelings. But last night, there was no trace of that love, not even hatred or anger, just cold indifference. And for some reason, that indifference was far more painful than anger. Seraphina's POV. The party ended around 11 p.m. I had quite a bit to drink, not enough to get drunk, but enough to make my cheeks flush and my steps a little unsteady. We made it back to the pack house safely. "Thank you for tonight," I said to Kairos, "especially for the performance." Kairos smiled, his eyes sparkling. "That wasn't a show, it was just delayed justice." I laughed softly. "Well, I enjoyed it." After a soothing warm shower, I got ready for bed. But as I lay in bed, I remembered something. I hadn't updated the affection score in the system. Lazily, I activated the hologram screen and opened the familiar menu. Current affection score, 45. I thought about tonight's events. Kairos had prepared such a thoughtful dinner. He even remembered my favorite food and chose the perfect wine. That deserved +5 points. And the clever way he punished Darius and Vesper last night. Mark was the one who carried it out, but I knew it was Kailos's idea. The way they were forced to drink until they were drunk while I could sit back and enjoy the show, it felt like sweet justice. Another +5 points. Updated affection score, 55. I turned off the screen and lay back down, staring at the ceiling. Only 45 points left until I could confess my feelings to Kairos. 45 points until I could say what was truly in my heart. But what would happen after that? The system gave me a target of 100 affection points, but never explained what happened afterward. Would I be stuck in this relationship forever? Or was there a way out? And more importantly, were the feelings growing in my heart real, or just the result of the system's manipulation? I shook my head, trying to chase those thoughts away. What was certain now was that I felt safe and happy with Kairos. He protected me, respected my choices, and gave me space to be myself. Wasn't that enough for now? I closed my eyes, letting fatigue pull me into sleep. In my dream, I saw Kailos's green eyes gazing at me gently, and for the first time in a long while I felt completely at peace. Seraphina's POV. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed, though my head was still a little dizzy from the wine the night before. The aroma of coffee and pancakes wafted from the kitchen, and I knew Kairos had already woken up. "Good morning," he greeted me as I entered the kitchen with my hair still messy. He was already dressed in a navy blue business shirt and formal pants, looking like a true CEO. "Morning," I replied, rubbing my eyes. "You always wake up this early?" "Habit," he answered, pouring me some coffee. "By the way, what about the job offer from yesterday? Have you thought about it?" I almost choked on my coffee. "Kairos, I already told you." "Seraphina," Callista suddenly appeared from her room, her hair even messier than mine. "You have to accept that offer." "Callista, listen," she sat down next to me seriously. "You can't keep relying on your savings, and now you're officially part of the Night Vale pack, right? That means you need a decent job here." Kairos nodded in agreement. "Callista's right. Besides, you're overqualified for that position. I'm the one who's benefiting." I was still hesitant when Callista suddenly pulled me into the corner of the kitchen and whispered, "Plus, do you know how many female wolves work at that company? They're all after Kairos. If you don't act fast, someone else will snatch him up." My stomach suddenly felt uneasy hearing that. The image of other female wolves flirting with Kairos made something strange churn in my chest. "All right," I finally gave in, "but on one condition. I want to be treated like an ordinary employee, no special treatment." Kailos's eyes sparkled. "Deal." An hour later, we were on our way to the Shadowmere Industries headquarters. The skyscraper towered over the business district, its dark modern facade exuding power and prestige. "Stop here," I said when we were still about 2 blocks away from the building. Kairos turned to look at me in confusion. "Why? We're still far away." "I don't want people to think I got in through connections," I explained. "Let me walk in alone." "Seraphina, that's ridiculous. Why would they care?" "Kairos, please. I want to prove that I can succeed on my own." We argued for a few minutes, until Kairos finally gave in with a sigh. "Fine, but if there's a problem, call me right away." "I will." The lobby of Shadowmere Industries was impressive, with high ceilings, shiny black marble, and strategically placed green plants. Several employees hurried by, all looking professional and busy. I approached the reception desk in the center of the lobby. A blonde woman with heavy makeup was busy checking her bright red nails. "Excuse me," I said politely. "I'd like to see Mr. Kairos Harrington for a job interview." The receptionist looked up and sized me up from head to toe with a clearly judgmental gaze. Her smile was fake and condescending. "Oh, another female wolf," she muttered. "Do you have an appointment?" "What? No, but—" "Then I'm afraid you'll have to leave, miss. Mr. Harrington is very busy and doesn't see visitors without an appointment." "I'm not just any visitor. I'm applying for the position of personal secretary." "Personal secretary?" She laughed loudly, her voice echoing through the lobby. Several people turned to look at us. "Do you think anyone can become Alpha Harrington's secretary?" Her gaze swept over my body as if I were something dirty. "Every day, dozens of female wolves come here with various reasons to meet Mr. Harrington. Social climbers like you are countless." I took a deep breath, trying to hold back my anger. "All right, then I'll call Mr. Harrington to confirm." "Oh, so now you claim to know him personally?" she sneered. "If you really know him, you must have his phone number, right?" I took my phone out of my bag and started looking for Kailos's contact. But the receptionist had already signaled to the 2 security guards standing near the elevator. "Gentlemen, please escort this lady out. She's disturbing our business." The 2 guards moved toward me with expressionless faces. I took a step back, feeling frustrated and angry. This was why I didn't want Kairos to drive me here. I wanted to prove that I could be accepted on my own merits, not because of connections. But now I wasn't even being given the chance to interview. Wait a minute. My hands were shaking with panic that began to spread to my chest. and I lost focus on my phone. Then suddenly the woman asked me a question. Are you making this decision on behalf of Alpha? Seraphina's POV. A powerful alpha aura suddenly filled the entire lobby, making the air feel heavy and oppressive. Everyone, employees, guests, even security guards, instinctively stepped back and bowed their heads. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end, not out of fear, but because of a familiar and calming strength. Kairos. He stood near the private elevator, wearing a flawless black suit, his face like a cold, terrifying mask. His green eyes swept the room before settling on the receptionist, who was now trembling in fear. Mr. Harrington, she stammered, her face as pale as paper. I don't know. You don't know much, it seems, Kairos cut in, his voice low and dangerous. Every word that came out of his mouth felt like ice piercing the air. Archer! A man in a gray suit, who turned out to be Beta Archer, immediately emerged from the crowd. Yes, Alpha? Find a new receptionist who's more sensible. Demote this one to cleaning service, effective immediately. But sir, I've been working here for... The receptionist tried to protest. 2 years, Kairos interrupted without looking at her. 2 wasted years, it seems. He walked toward me with a firm stride. Seraphina, get in. It wasn't a request, but an order, and for some reason, I felt the need to obey. We entered the luxurious private elevator, with its mahogany interior and gleaming mirrors. As soon as the doors closed, Kailos's tense expression melted away. He took a deep breath and rubbed his face. I'm sorry about earlier, I said softly. Thank you for coming. You don't need to apologize, he replied, his voice softening again. I should be the one apologizing. I promised to protect you, but I let you be treated like that. A strong aura emanated from his body, leaving a slight trace of tension and anger in the air. Kairos, I'm not a child or Callista who needs you to protect me all the time, I said, trying to keep my voice professional. As your secretary, I should be able to handle things like this myself. But I couldn't ignore the scent of pine and cedar coming from his body. In the enclosed elevator, the scent was even more intense, making me resist the urge to breathe it in more deeply. My secretary? He turned to face me, his green eyes flashing. Is that all you think I am to you? My heart began to race. Kairos. Before I could answer, he stepped forward, trapping me in the corner of the elevator. His hands rested on the walls on either side of my head, his face only inches from mine. Do you know the effect you have on me? He whispered, his breath warm against my cheek. Your scent, the way you move, the way you look at me. I swallowed hard. Kairos, we're working. So what? His fingers touched my chin, forcing me to look into his eyes. You're part of my pack now. You're mine. The last word was spoken with a tone of ownership that made me tremble, not out of fear, but something deeper. Ding. The sound of the elevator reaching the top floor broke the moment. I slipped out of his grasp and ran out of the elevator, my cheeks burning and my heart pounding. Seraphina, where is my office? I interrupted him, hoping that would ease the tension between us. Kairos smiled slightly like a predator who knew his prey couldn't escape. Follow me. He led me through a wide corridor with thick carpets and expensive paintings. The employees we passed bowed respectfully to Kairos, but I could feel their curious glances directed at me. This is your office, he said, opening the door to the room right next to his spacious workspace. I want you close, for convenience. This room is beautiful. A large wooden desk, comfortable leather chairs, big windows overlooking the city, and bookshelves filled with books. But what stopped me was how close this room was to Kailos's office. There was only a connecting door between the 2 rooms. Isn't this too? Kailos's phone rang, cutting me off. He looked at the screen and sighed. Meeting with a Japanese client in 5 minutes. Beta Marcus will explain your tasks later, okay? Before I could answer, he was already gone, leaving me alone in this luxurious new room. I tried to get used to my surroundings, checking the computer and filing cabinet, when the door suddenly opened without a knock. A brown-haired girl in a tight red dress appeared, her face full of doubt and jealousy. Who are you? She asked bluntly. And why are you in Alpha Kailos's office? Her eyes narrowed, scrutinizing every detail of my appearance with an unfriendly gaze. I'm Lydia, the senior assistant in the finance department, and I've never seen you before. There was something in her tone that made me wary. This wasn't just a casual question from a new coworker. I'm Seraphina, I replied, trying to stay professional, the new personal secretary to Alpha Kairos. Lydia's eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. Personal secretary? But that position was never open to the public. How did you get this position? From the tone of her voice and the way she looked at me, I knew exactly what she was thinking, and I also knew that this was just the beginning of the problems I would face here. Kailos's POV. The 25th floor meeting room was filled with department heads sitting upright around a large oval conference table. Thick reports were scattered across the glass surface, while the projector screen displayed graphs showing the company's performance. This quarter's financial report shows an 18% increase in revenue from the initial estimate. Marcus read the figures with a satisfied tone, especially after we successfully secured the commercial development contract from Blue Ridge Pack last month. I nodded, flipping through the documents. How ironic. The pack led by Seraphina's former fiancé was indirectly helping boost my company's profits. What about the profit margin? It's up 12%, Alpha. Their infrastructure project is profitable, though. Marcus paused. They seem a bit desperate to wrap up the contract quickly, like they need cash flow fast. I almost smiled, remembering how pathetic Darius and Vesper had looked last night. Continue. Sarah from the marketing department raised her hand. Alpha, given this positive momentum, we propose expanding by acquiring more small and medium-sized construction companies. This will consolidate our position as the market leader in this region. Too risky, I replied immediately. The economic situation is still volatile. Focus on organic growth first. We don't need to rush into unnecessary risks. Sarah nodded, though she looked a bit disappointed. Understood, Alpha. Jackson, the head of security, cleared his throat. Alpha, there's been a report of suspicious activity in the northern region. Several rogue wolves are roaming our border territory. Plus, 3 small groups have requested an alliance and protection this week. I furrowed my brow. The timing is suspicious. Investigate their backgrounds thoroughly before making any decisions, and increase patrols in the northern area, double shifts if necessary. Copy that, Alpha. Elena from the welfare department raised a blue folder. There are a few issues that need your attention, Alpha. The training program for young wolves is going well, but there have been some complaints from Omega families about the housing conditions in the residential area. They feel that the accommodations are inadequate compared to those of the Beta and Gamma families. I sighed. This was a sensitive issue that needed to be handled carefully. Fix it immediately. Upgrade the housing facilities for all Omega families in the pack. Budget is not an issue. What matters is maintaining harmony within the pack. Happy pack members are productive pack members. We'll handle it right away, Alpha. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours, discussing various operational aspects from territorial management to trade agreements with neighboring packs. But honestly, my mind kept drifting to the room next door. The wolf inside me kept teasing me. You're worried about her, aren't you? No, I replied in my mind. It's normal for a new employee. I'm just making sure she's not experiencing culture shock. Oh, please, the wolf mocked. You wouldn't put her office right next to yours if that were true. You can even smell her from here. And it was true. Even with a thick wall between us, I could still catch faint traces of vanilla and jasmine coming from her direction. It made the wolf inside me restless, wanting to make sure she was safe, making sure no one was bothering her. Alpha? Marcus's voice snapped me out of my reverie. Yes. The meeting is over. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I glanced at my watch. It had been almost an hour since I left Seraphina alone. No, that's all. Good work, everyone. Dismissed. The department heads began packing up and leaving one by one, but Marcus stayed behind. What's wrong? I asked, gathering my documents. About your new secretary, he said cautiously. The staff has started talking. They're curious how Miss Luminara got the position without going through the usual recruitment process. I stopped gathering papers and stared at him sharply. And? Nothing, Alpha. It's just, you know how office politics work. It might be best if you issue a clear statement about professionalism and merit-based employment in this company. I nodded slowly. Marcus was right. Gossip could damage Seraphina's credibility and make her position difficult in the company. I'll handle it. Arrange an all-staff meeting tomorrow morning. Will do, Alpha. After Marcus left, I hurried back to my office. But as I passed Seraphina's room, I heard voices from inside. 2 female voices, and one of them sounded unfriendly. The wolf inside me immediately went on alert. Someone's bothering our mate. She's not our mate, I corrected myself, even though my body was already moving toward the door. Yet, the wolf added in a satisfied tone. I pressed my ear against the door, listening to the conversation inside. An unfamiliar voice spoke in a somewhat aggressive tone, while Seraphina's voice sounded professional but tense. How did you get this position? I've been working here for 3 years and there's never been an opening for the Alpha's secretary position that didn't go through internal promotion or proper recruitment. Lydia, I recognize that voice now. She was from the finance department, one of the employees who was ambitious. As I already explained, Seraphina's voice remained calm. I was recruited directly by Alpha Kairos. If you have any issues with my recruitment process, you can file a formal complaint with HR. Oh, please. We all know how direct recruitment works, especially for a position this close to Alpha. The wolf inside me growled angrily. She dares to insinuate that our mate got the job because... My hand was already on the doorknob, ready to enter and end this conversation, when I heard Seraphina's voice again. Lydia, I appreciate your concern about fairness in the workplace, but I don't feel the need to prove my competence or qualifications to you. If you have a problem with Alpha's decision, please speak to him directly. Her tone was cold and authoritative, without a hint of intimidation or self-doubt. I felt proud, and also a little aroused, hearing how she handled such a hostile situation with grace and strength. You think just because you're close to Alpha, you can talk to me like that? I'm talking like this because I'm a professional who doesn't have time for unproductive office drama. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Perfect. She didn't need my rescue, but that didn't stop the wolf inside me from wanting to step in and show Lydia and everyone else that Seraphina was under my protection. Soon, I promised the wolf, soon everyone will know she's ours. Seraphina's POV. So you're Alpha Kairos' new secretary? Her voice was sharp, full of contempt. I straightened my shoulders, maintaining a professional demeanor, even though the wolf inside me was starting to get restless. Yes, I'm Seraphina Luminara, Alpha Kairos' personal secretary. How can I help you? She sneered, stepping inside without invitation and closing the door behind her. You must be lying. How could Alpha Kairos possibly hire someone like you so easily? Her eyes scanned my body from head to toe with a condescending gaze that made my fur stand on end. Especially without a proper recruitment process. You must be a spy from a rival pack who snuck in. The wolf inside me growled softly. This accusation not only insulted my professionalism, but also indirectly disrespected Kairos. I could feel the aggressive aura emanating from her. She was clearly not an ordinary Omega wolf. I'm sorry, but I think you've misunderstood, I said coldly. Alpha Kairos wouldn't just hire someone without careful consideration. That's why he would never give you a chance. Her face flushed, her golden green eyes flashing with anger. How dare you? Her hand flew toward me, intending to slap me, but my reflexes were faster. I caught her wrist in a firm grip, feeling the beta strength flowing beneath her skin. I suggest you think twice before touching me, I whispered dangerously. I may be new here, but that doesn't mean I'll just stand by and be treated with disrespect. She tried to pull her hand away, but my grip was too strong. Our eyes met, and for a moment I saw a flash of fear behind her arrogance. Let me go. After you promise to leave this room calmly. The door opened again, this time more slowly. Beta Archer entered, his gaze immediately fixed on the two of us. His expression changed from surprise to seriousness when he saw the situation. Is there a problem here? His voice was calm but authoritative. The woman, her name was Lydia, immediately broke free from my grip and ran toward Archer. Beta Archer, she hit me! This spy attacked me without provocation. I rolled my eyes, not believing this cheap act. I didn't hit her. I only held her hand because she was about to slap me. Archer glared at both of us, then focused on Lydia. Lydia, what are you doing here? This room is reserved for the Alpha's secretary. I just wanted to introduce myself to the new secretary, but it turns out she is Miss Seraphina Luminara. Archer cut in with a cold tone that startled me. The Alpha heiress personally hired by Alpha Kairos as his personal secretary. And you, Lydia, should know your place and not disturb senior staff without an appointment. Lydia looked shocked, her mouth agape. The Alpha heiress, but she... Back to your desk, Lydia. Now. Archer's command was final. With her face red with embarrassment and anger, Lydia stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Archer sighed deeply, then looked at me with an apologetic expression. I apologize for the incident, Miss Luminara. Lydia, she has a history with some of the previous Alpha secretaries. History? She's been trying to get promoted to a position closer to Alpha for 3 years. Sometimes she gets too ambitious. I nodded in understanding. So my guess was right. She was one of Kailos's many admirers. Archer pulled a thick folder from his bag. This is the complete task guide for your position. Official office duties, plus managing Alpha Kailos's daily life. I took the folder with curiosity. Daily life, meal schedules, food preferences, personal appointments, even making sure he gets enough rest. Alpha Kairos is a terrible workaholic. He often forgets his own basic needs. After Archer left, I opened the folder and started reading. My eyes widened at the absurdly long list. Alpha Kailos's food restrictions. No seafood after 6 p.m. Coffee must be pure espresso, no sugar or milk. No spicy food during important meetings. Sandwiches must be cut diagonally, not horizontally. Water must be room temperature, not cold. No citrus fruits when it's raining. Clothing preferences. Shirts must be ironed with perfect creases. Ties must match the color of the shirt and suit. Shoes must be cleaned every morning. Do not wear bright colors for meetings with other teams. Daily schedule. Wake up at 5:30. Exercise 6 to 7. Breakfast at 7:30. Menu is predetermined for each day. Office at 8:30. Lunch break must be at 12 sharp, no delays. Do not leave work after 10 p.m., except in case of emergency. The list continued with almost obsessive detail. It ranged from room temperature preferences, 21 degrees, no more, no less, to how he liked his documents organized, by date, then priority, then alphabetically. Kairos is really hard to please, I muttered, shaking my head. How could someone have such specific preferences and... So is this how you see me? The familiar voice made my heart skip a beat. Seraphina's POV. My body tensed as I turned around and almost collided with Kailos's broad chest. The distance between us was only a few inches, close enough for his warm breath to brush against my face. His dark gray eyes stared intently, as if searching for something in my own. Kairos! His name escaped my lips in a startled whisper. Instead of stepping back to give me space, he moved closer. One hand landed on the edge of the table behind me, effectively trapping me between his body and the furniture. The familiar crooked smile played on his lips. If you're trying to bribe me like this, his voice was low and teasing, I might consider softening up on you. My heart was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. Oh, of course, I replied sarcastically, crossing my arms over my chest. You must get flattered by female wolves like this all the time. They all use physical closeness to get your attention, right? Kailos's eyebrows rose, amusement replacing his previous intensity. Seraphina, are you jealous? Jealous? I almost laughed at the absurd accusation. I'm just stating a fact. Men like you must be used to such manipulation. Men like me? He leaned closer so I could feel the warmth of his body. And what do you think men like me are like? My throat felt dry. His masculine scent, a mix of cedar and something wild, primal, disrupted my concentration. You know exactly what you are. Explain to me. His voice was like velvet tickling my ears. I tried to step back, but my back was already pressed against the table. Arrogant, manipulative, used to getting what you want with fake charm. Instead of being offended, he laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that made my stomach flutter strangely. Fake charm? Seraphina, sweetheart, everything about me is real, especially when it comes to you. I'm not your sweetheart, I protested, though my voice sounded less angry than I'd hoped. Not yet, he corrected with a smile that made my knees weak. But you look so cute when you're stubborn like this. Heat spread across my cheeks. Embarrassed and frustrated with my own reaction to his teasing, I placed both palms on his chest and pushed him away. Go to your office and let me work in peace, I ordered, trying to sound firm even though my heart was still racing. Kairos stepped back with a satisfied smile, as if he had gotten the reaction he wanted. As you wish, Miss Luminera, but don't forget my lunch break is at exactly 12. Grilled salmon, remember? He turned toward the connecting door to his office, but paused for a moment. Oh, and Seraphina? Next time you want to argue about my charm, make sure you're not blushing. It ruins your credibility. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with a face that felt like it was on fire and a heart still beating wildly. The rest of the day passed with Kairos busy in meeting after meeting, while I didn't have much to do. After organizing his schedule, ordering lunch, and finishing some light administrative tasks, I felt a little bored. That's why, when Callista knocked on my door with 2 cups of coffee, I welcomed her with relief. I thought you might need someone to talk to, she said, handing me one of the cups. The first day is usually overwhelming. Thanks. I took the coffee gratefully. And yeah, overwhelming is an understatement. Callista laughed, sitting down in the chair across from me. I heard you met Lydia this morning. I rolled my eyes. A meeting that was memorable. Wait, did you hear about that? I asked, raising my eyebrows. She nodded. I heard some employees gossiping downstairs earlier. Don't worry about it. Lydia has a reputation as a drama queen, but Callista hesitated. I heard she got an official warning from Alpha. A warning? More than that, actually. Callista lowered her voice. She and some of her close friends in the finance department have been permanently banned from coming to this floor without written permission from Beta Archer. I nearly choked on my coffee. Seriously. Alpha Kilos apparently doesn't mess around when it comes to protecting his senior staff. Especially those, she gave me a meaningful look, who are special to him. My heart started racing. I'm not special, I'm just the new secretary. Yes, but I know what my brother is like. He would never punish an employee that severely unless it meant something. She raised her eyebrows with a look that was strange to me. I furrowed my brow. What does it mean? She clicked her tongue. It means you're special. I looked away, trying to hide the blush on my cheeks. After Callista left, I couldn't focus on my work. My mind kept returning to what she had said. Was Kairos really defending me? And if so, why? The hatred I had felt toward him since this morning was fading. It was being replaced by something more complex, more dangerous, something similar to appreciation, gratitude, or maybe something deeper than that. Seraphina. Kailos's voice came through the intercom, breaking my reverie. Can you come to my office for a moment? I straightened my blazer and walked to his office. He was sitting behind a large desk, still wearing a white shirt that was slightly wrinkled after a day of meetings. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing muscular arms that made my mouth go dry. Can I help you? I asked, trying to remain professional. We're leaving soon, he said, shutting down his laptop. But before that, I need you to wait in the underground parking garage. I'll meet you there after I finish one last call. Parking garage? I was confused. Why not the usual lobby? A mysterious smile played on his lips. Trust me on this one. The special elevator at the end of the corridor will take you directly to basement level 3. Wait by the black BMW. Though curious, I nodded and prepared to leave, but his voice stopped me. And Seraphina, grab your bag and jacket. We're not going straight home. 15 minutes later, I stood beside a shiny black BMW in the empty basement. The atmosphere was a bit eerie with minimal lighting, and the echo of footsteps made me feel a little nervous. Sorry for the wait. Kairos emerged from behind a pillar, already dressed casually in black jeans and a leather jacket that made him look younger and dangerous. Wow, changed your outfit? I commented as I got into the car. We're not going to the pack house, he replied, starting the engine, and I think formal attire would look out of place where we're going. I furrowed my brow. Where are we going? Surprise. He smiled as he pulled out of the garage. At first, I thought we were going to drive around the city, or maybe have dinner at a fancy restaurant. But after half an hour of driving in relative silence, only soft jazz music flowing from the speakers, I began to realize that we were heading in a familiar direction. Very familiar. Kairos, I said slowly as I saw the signboard on the side of the road. Why are we going to the airport? He glanced at me with the same mysterious smile, his dark eyes sparking with something that made me uneasy. Like I said, sweetheart, it's a surprise. The BMW drove smoothly into the airport complex, and my heart began to race with a mix of excitement and anxiety. What was he planning? And why did I feel that whatever it was, my life would change after tonight? Kairos, I tried again, my voice trembling slightly. Where are we going? He parked the car in the VIP parking area and turned off the engine. When he turned to look at me, the intensity in his eyes took my breath away. You'll see. Before I could protest or ask any further questions, he had already stepped out of the car and opened my door with a gentlemanly gesture that contrasted sharply with the mysterious aura surrounding him. With trembling hands, I took his outstretched hand and let him guide me into the terminal. His dark gray eyes were so intense and sincere that I felt as though the world had disappeared and only the two of us remained in this little bubble. Kairos. His name slipped from my lips in a breath. Say yes, he whispered, his hand reaching up to touch my cheek gently. Say yes to dinner in Switzerland. Say yes to a ski vacation. Say yes to us. Something inside me broke. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Maybe it was because he remembered my little wish that seemed so insignificant. Or maybe it was because, for the first time in years, someone was trying to make me happy without expecting anything in return. Without thinking, I leaned in and kissed him. My lips pressed against his with desperate intensity, and for a moment he was taken aback. But then his hands slid behind my head, his fingers tangled in my hair, and he kissed me back with such passion that the world spun. Seraphina, my name sounded like a prayer on his lips as we pulled apart briefly to breathe. Shh, I whispered, pulling his shirt collar closer. Just be quiet and kiss me. He didn't need to be told twice. With a smooth motion, he lifted me from the chair and carried me to the wider sofa. We fell together, his body covering mine with perfect weight, making me feel protected and desired at the same time. His hands moved with skilled precision, unbuttoning my blazer one button at a time while his lips explored my neck. Every touch sent an electric current through my veins, making me arch toward him. You're beautiful, he whispered in my ear, his voice hoarse and filled with desire. So beautiful. I responded by pulling his shirt out of his pants, my hands exploring the firm muscles of his abdomen beneath the fabric. He sighed softly in my ear, a sound that made heat gather in my stomach. My blazer was open, and his hands had just begun to move toward the buttons of my blouse when, knock, 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 we both froze. Excuse me, Mr. Kairos? The flight attendant's polite voice sounded from outside the cabin. Would you and your companion like to have dinner now? We've prepared the 7-course meal you ordered. Kairos sighed in frustration and lowered his head onto my shoulder. The worst possible time, he muttered. I couldn't help but laugh. Seraphina's POV. Kairos' eyes flashed sharply, and I could feel the heat in his chest as he was overcome with emotion. His blue eyes shone and his jaw tightened with frustration. He then stood up and walked toward the cabin door. Not now, he said in a cold voice that sent a chill down my spine, not because of passion this time, but because of threat. Be back in an hour. But sir, the dinner will get cold if... I said not now. His voice exploded with alpha authority, making the air around us tremble. Leave. Us alone. Silence followed, then the sound of hurried footsteps receded. Kairos stood with his back to me, his hands clenched at his sides, clearly trying to regain control of himself. I felt guilty that his mood had changed so drastically because of my interruption. But before I could say anything to break the tension, growl. A loud rumbling sound from my stomach broke the silence in the most embarrassing way. My eyes widened in fear, and I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. Slowly, Kairos turned to look at me, and his angry expression slowly changed to one of sadness and disappointment. He stared at me with a desperate look, one eyebrow raised in disbelief. Seriously, Seraphina, you? He sighed regretfully, his voice sounding weak, while I silently covered my mouth to hold back my laughter. However, I was still very embarrassed. My face was now so hot I could feel it spreading to my ears. He looked at me with a strange expression, his lips pursed like a baby who didn't get what he wanted. Embarrassed, I quickly covered my face with both hands, hoping I could disappear right then and there. Oh, goddess, this is so embarrassing. Damn stomach. Silence fell. A few seconds passed in stillness. The next moment, a burst of laughter erupted from Kairos, starting softly, then growing louder until he covered his face, which was clearly red. I could tell the corners of his eyes were teary. You. He pointed at me, still laughing and shaking his head. You're a unique and special woman, he said. However, seeing him like that made me feel even more ticklish. I became even more embarrassed. Don't laugh like that, I said. I'm sorry, dear. He came closer and pulled my hands away from my face, his blue eyes now shining warmly with a hint of frustration. But you have to admit, the timing was perfect for ruining the mood. I didn't mean to. I know. He kissed my forehead gently. And honestly, it's probably for the best. I didn't want our first time to be rushed because we were starving. Our first time. Those words made my heart race with a different kind of anticipation. He reached for the intercom and pressed a button. Could you please ask the chef to prepare dinner now? We're ready. To my surprise, I discovered that this private jet was equipped with a professional chef who cooked right in front of us. I was fascinated to see him work with such skill in an efficient yet fully equipped kitchen. Good evening, Chef Laurent, a Frenchman in his 50s with a thick accent, greeted us with a smile. Tonight, I will be serving 7 courses using the finest ingredients from around the world. The first course was lobster tartare served on a pearl spoon with caviar and micro herbs. Each bite exploded with fresh, salty, and sweet flavors that made my eyes close in pure delight. This lobster was brought in fresh from Maine this morning, Chef Laurent explained, made with acetra caviar and finished with yuzu kosho for a spicy kick. Kairos sat across from me, watching with an amused expression as I nearly sighed after each bite. Delicious, he asked with a smirk. This, I swallowed, this is incredible. I've never tasted anything like this before. The second course was fried foie gras with fig compote and soft brioche bread. Then came the fried John Dory with cauliflower puree and chocolate butter sauce that made my tongue tingle. But the fifth course was the most astonishing. Perfectly fried Wagyu A5 beef with truffle shavings and roasted bone marrow. Every bite melted in my mouth like butter. This comes from Kobe, Japan, Chef Laurent explained as he sliced fresh truffles over the meat. Grade A5, the highest possible rating, and these truffles are fresh from Périgord, France. I couldn't help but be mesmerized by the deliciousness. Kairos, this, I can't even. I'm glad you like it, he said, but he barely touched his food, more focused on watching me enjoy every bite. Dessert was the perfect finale, a black chocolate soufflé with a salty caramel filling and homemade vanilla ice cream. Chef Laurent, I said after finishing, that was truly amazing. Thank you. He bowed with a proud smile. It was my honor, miss. Enjoy the rest of your flight. After the chef cleaned up and left us alone, I leaned back in my seat with a sigh of relief. I can't believe you have a professional chef on your private jet. Only the best for you, he said softly, but his gaze made my heart race. Kairos, I called hesitantly, letting out a soft sigh and not finishing my words. My body felt uneasy. Maybe I needed. Change your clothes, he said, cutting off my thoughts, reading my mind. I've prepared some clothes for you in the bedroom, something comfortable for the long flight. I smiled and nodded, then stood up quickly, but suddenly felt nervous. Where? Through that door, he pointed to the back of the cabin. Take your time. The bedroom in this jet was more like a luxury hotel suite than an airplane cabin. A king-size bed with silk sheets, a small sitting area, and an ensuite bathroom with marble finishes. On top of the bed was a pair of obviously expensive clothes, a beautiful pair of champagne-colored silk pajamas. I started to take off my blazer, then my blouse, trying to calm myself down. Even though dinner was amazing, I couldn't stop thinking about what had almost happened and what might happen after I changed. I had just taken off my bra when the door suddenly opened. Kairos stood in the doorway, his dark blue eyes immediately drawn to my bare skin. His face was expressionless, but his gaze took my breath away. Kairos, I hissed, quickly trying to cover myself with my hands. But he didn't move. He didn't turn away. He didn't apologize. Instead, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him softly, his eyes never leaving my body. Don't, he said hoarsely as I tried to grab my pajama top. Don't cover yourself. My heart was racing, and I knew, from the way he looked at me, the way his breath came in short gasps, and the way the air between us almost trembled with tension. I knew exactly what was going to happen, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't want to run away from him. Seraphina's POV. Wow, it's so beautiful, I muttered in awe without realizing it. Suddenly, I felt Kailos's body press against my back, his lips close to my ear. "Welcome to Switzerland," he whispered, his warm breath making my heart flutter, especially his hoarse voice, typical of someone who had just woken up. Very macho. Last night's events played over and over in my head. How he gently took my hand, kissed it softly and tenderly, the way he whispered words of love in my ear, making me blush with embarrassment, and how he made everything in bed so hot and intoxicating in just one night. I admitted he was good at teasing me. Or was it me who accidentally made him fall for me? When the jet finally landed, Kairos stood up and held out his hand to me. "Ready?" I nodded, even though my legs were shaking as we walked toward the exit. The Swiss air hit my face like waking from a dream, fresh and sharp with the promise of winter. Before I could take another step, Kairos lifted me into his arms, carrying me down the airplane stairs as though I weighed nothing at all. "Kairos!" I gasped, my arms instinctively wrapping around his neck. "Put me down! People are staring!" Some of the crew members stared at us with embarrassed expressions, and I could see their smiles making my stomach flutter. I was so embarrassed. I quickly tightened my grip and hid my face in Kailos's chest, inhaling the cedar scent from his body that I was addicted to. "Let them look," he said, uttering those words without a care in the world, but I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. The drive to the hotel was filled with fog from the winding mountain roads, but the view was breathtaking. Kairos sat beside me, his hand tightly holding mine. The warmth of his skin made me feel warm, as the air was very cold. However, as if knowing what I was feeling, he did his best to keep me comfortable. When we arrived at the hotel, I understood why he was so confident about this accommodation. The building was a stunning blend of traditional Swiss architecture and modern luxury, with warm wood and sparkling glass contrasting against the dramatic mountain backdrop. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "I own it with a business partner," Kairos explained as we walked through the opulent lobby. "We'll have complete privacy here." At the reception desk, my brain finally started to function properly. "I'd like separate rooms, please," I said, my voice sounding firmer than I intended. Kairos raised an eyebrow. "Seraphina." "Please," I interrupted, my cheeks burning. I need some space to think." For a moment, something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Hurt? But then his expression smoothed into understanding. "Of course," he said quietly. Then, turning to me with an intensity that made my breath catch, he added, "I promise I won't touch you tonight. We can share a suite with separate bedrooms." I searched his eyes, looking for any sign of deception, but found only sincerity. "You promise?" "I give you my word." And somehow, I believed him. Far from what I had imagined, the suite I would be staying in turned out to be much more luxurious. Once again, I was amazed by what Kairos had chosen for me today. As Kairos promised, he wouldn't make me share a room with him. We had separate bedrooms. He had initially objected, but eventually agreed. The man was currently staying in a different room. He left after dropping me off. He didn't forget to hug me tightly and kiss my forehead gently before we parted. "Sleep well, dear," he whispered, and unfortunately his words almost made me waver. I almost asked him to stay in my room, but I quickly came to my senses. The next morning, I woke up to an odd yet pleasurable sensation. A warm touch caressing my waist, so soft and warm, followed by a kiss on the back of my neck, making me almost moan, especially when I began to feel something hard pressing against my lower back. I sighed, still half asleep and melting into the warmth behind me. "Good morning. You look beautiful when you wake up, and sexy." Kairos' hoarse voice made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. His hands spread across my stomach, pulling me closer to him. My awareness began to fully return, and as my eyes slowly opened, I realized that what was happening wasn't a dream. I moaned softly, then murmured, "Kairos, are you here?" His hand then moved to my lower area, his long fingers dancing along the edge of my short pants, which were probably already a little wet inside. "What are you doing?" I murmured hoarsely. However, he didn't answer. It feels good, he whispered, his warm breath brushing against my neck, making my face flush. At first, I was carried away by his mischievous hands, but then I realized something. Wait, I said, though my voice was unconvincing. You promised. I promised I wouldn't touch you last night, he said, gently biting my earlobe. It's morning now. We were supposed to go skiing today, I said, trying to sound firm even though my eyes kept drifting to his bare chest. He sighed, pressing his forehead against mine. Right now, I can think of a much better way to spend this morning. Kairos, I said, placing my hands on his chest to create some distance between us. Please, I've never been skiing before, and I'm already nervous enough. He stared at my face for a moment, then sighed and stepped back. All right, but tonight, Seraphina. His eyes darkened with promise. Tonight, I won't make any more promises. An hour later, we were at the resort, and I stared at the mountain slope with a mixture of excitement and fear. The skiers glided gracefully and effortlessly, making it look easy, but I knew better. I have to tell you, I said, fiddling with the ski boots I had just rented. I've never done this before. Kairos, looking very attractive in his black ski suit, smiled. I had a feeling you wouldn't. Don't worry, I'll teach you everything you need to know. For the next 2 hours, he was the most patient instructor I'd ever had. He showed me how to position my feet, use the ski poles, and shift my weight to control speed and direction. But it felt like torture when he stood so close, his hands guiding my movements, his breath warm on my neck as he corrected my posture. Feel the edge of your skis, he whispered, his chest pressed against my back as he helped me practice turns. Trust your body to find your balance. I tried to focus on his instructions, but his closeness made it impossible to concentrate on anything but the feel of his hands on my waist and the intoxicating scent of his cologne mixed with the fresh mountain air. I think I'm starting to get it, I said, though my voice was breathless. You've got talent, he said, and I could hear the pride in his voice. Ready to try the beginner's slope on your own? I looked at the gentle slope he pointed to and felt a wave of confidence wash over me. Yeah, I think so. I'll be here watching, he said, but I could see the worry in his eyes. Take it slow, and remember, if you feel like you're going too fast, cut your skis like slices of pizza like I showed you. I nodded, adjusting my helmet and ski poles. But just as I was about to step forward, a man dressed in neat black ski gear approached us. He was tall and thin, with an air of authority that reminded me of Kairos. Jake, Kairos greeted him with a nod, though I noticed his posture become more alert. Business takes me everywhere, the man replied with a thick European accent. His pale blue eyes looked at me with undisguised curiosity. And who is this beautiful woman? Seraphina, Kairos said briefly, approaching me. Seraphina, this is Jake Volkov. He's the alpha of the European group I mentioned. I gave a polite smile, but there was something about Jake that made me uncomfortable. There was a predatory quality to the way he looked at me, as if I were something to be evaluated. Charming, Jake said, taking my gloved hand and bringing it to his lips in an old-fashioned gesture that felt more possessive than polite. Kairos, you really outdid yourself. Kairos clenched his jaw. What brings you to Switzerland, Jake? I thought we weren't supposed to meet until next week. There was a change of plans, Jake replied, his eyes never leaving my face. There are some things we need to discuss, in private. I could feel the tension radiating from Kairos, and I realized that this was my chance. While they were busy with their alpha business, I could finally try the slope for myself. I had been practicing for hours, and I felt ready. I'm going down now, I announced, pushing forward before either of them could stop me. Seraphina, wait! I heard Kairos call from behind, but I had already picked up speed, the wind rushing against my face as I navigated Seraphina's POV. My first attempt at skiing down the slope as a beginner ended badly. I lost control and fell into a pile of snow. However, instead of giving up, I laughed with a growing sense of enthusiasm. Then I got back up and brushed the snow off my jacket. Come on, Seraphina, I muttered as I stood up. You can do this. My second attempt wasn't much better. I managed to stay upright longer, but panic set in as my speed increased, and I deliberately fell to avoid colliding with the safety fence. On the third attempt, something went wrong. I remembered Kalos' instructions about weight distribution and turning techniques. I made it halfway before losing my balance, but it was progress. The fourth attempt was the charm. I gave myself a mental boost. The lessons Kalos had taught me should be enough for me to practice on my own. This time, everything felt right. As I glided, I felt strength in my legs. A smile spread across my face as I realized I could balance myself on the skis. I finally glided smoothly without any obstacles, making me cheer with joy. Using my legs as brakes, I stopped with a smooth and gentle movement, and my heart swelled with happiness. I had succeeded because I overcame my fear and replaced it with courage. It hadn't been easy for me. Skiing was a first, and I was proud that I managed to do it well. I proved to everyone here that I had succeeded. I can ski, I muttered happily, and even my wolf cheered inside my head. I couldn't wait to try again, so I went back to the lift. I couldn't contain my happiness, and I smiled all the way there without even realizing it. Suddenly, two men dressed just like me approached. One of them had blonde hair and green eyes, and the other had brown eyes and thick eyebrows. They were tall and athletic, and from the way they held their poles, I could tell they weren't ordinary people. They looked like professional ski instructors. "Impressive progress," one said with a warm smile, stopping gracefully beside me. "We've been watching your practice. You have a natural balance." "Thank you," I replied, flattered by the compliment. "Though natural might be an overstatement, I've fallen more times than I can count." "Everyone falls when they're learning," the other added. "But you got back up, and that's what matters. My name is Eric, by the way." He pointed to his friend. "And this is my brother, Lucas." "Seraphina," I introduced myself, noticing the slight accent in their English, perhaps German or Austrian. "What a beautiful name," Eric said. "If you don't mind, I noticed a few small things that might help your technique." They patiently demonstrated subtle adjustments to my body position and turning technique for the next few minutes. They were expert skiers, and their tips were very useful. They explained how to shift my weight more smoothly when turning and use my ski poles more effectively for balance. "You're leaning too far forward when you go down," Lucas said. "Keep your weight in the middle of the skis and let your knees do more work to absorb the terrain." I tried the adjustment and immediately felt more stable. "That's much better, thanks." "Glad we could help," said Eric. "Are you here for long?" "Switzerland has some amazing trails when you're ready to move beyond the beginner slopes." "We're locals," added Lucas. "We know all the hidden spots, places where beginners can practice without the crowds or beautiful routes that aren't too challenging but offer stunning views." "That sounds amazing," I said, truly appreciating their kindness. "We can exchange contacts," Eric suggested casually. "I'll show you around properly. Switzerland is so much more beautiful when you know the places." I hesitated, unsure how to respond. They seemed genuinely kind, and their offer was tempting, but something held me back. It could have been instinct, or simply because I knew I wasn't here as a free person. Before I could respond politely, I felt a familiar presence behind me. Strong arms wrapped around my waist, and I was pulled back to rest against a solid, warm chest. "Gentlemen," Kalos's voice was perfectly controlled, but its cold tone made the temperature around us seem to drop. "Thank you for your kindness to my fiancé." The word fiancé startled me, but I didn't protest. I could feel the alpha's strength radiating from him, like physical power, controlled but undeniable. Eric and Lucas stood tall, their relaxed demeanor shifting to respectful and alert. "Of course," Eric replied quickly, his tone becoming more formal. "We were only offering technical advice." "Very kind of you," Kairos replied, his arm tightening possessively around my waist. "But I will handle her training personally from now on." The two brothers exchanged glances, clearly aware of the rejection. They nodded politely and began to walk away, though I caught them glancing back with curious expressions. Kairos watched them disappear down the slope, his jaw tight and his eyes sharp. Even after they were out of sight, tension radiated from every line of his body. I couldn't help myself. Turning my head to look at him, I asked in a voice almost too quiet to hear, "Are you jealous?" "No," he said immediately, but the denial was too quick and harsh to be convincing. "Really?" I pressed, enjoying the way the lines on his face grew deeper. Because you looked like you wanted to challenge them in an alpha dominance contest. I was just being cautious, he said stiffly. They were strangers approaching you. He stopped abruptly, the lines on his face deepening further. Me? I asked innocently, though my heart was racing at the possessive tone in his voice. It doesn't matter, he muttered, but his pouting lips looked incredibly adorable. Seeing a strong, dominant alpha acting like a jealous boyfriend made my heart race. The fact that he cared enough to be possessive, even if he was too stubborn to admit it, made me feel warm and happy. Unable to resist teasing him a little more, I hugged him and wrapped my arms around his neck. Whatever it is, I said softly, standing on my tiptoes to bring my face closer to his, I just want you to be my teacher. The tension in his shoulders began to ease, and his expression softened. All right, he said, his voice rough but satisfied. Feeling bold from his reaction, I decided to take a chance and push further. I let my voice take on a slightly pleading tone, the same one I used as a child when I wanted something from my parents. Kairos, I said with the most innocent expression, I'm thirsty. Can you get me something warm to drink? All this is making me cold. He looked at me suspiciously, as if he realized I was up to something, but then his expression melted into something soft and indulgent. Of course, dear, there's some delicious hot chocolate in the cabin. He kissed my forehead quickly and warmly, making my stomach flutter. Wait here. Don't go anywhere. I promise, I replied, giving him the sweetest smile I could muster. He looked at me with narrowed eyes, then gave me a small smile that seemed to say how adorable he found me. After he had his fill of glancing at my face, he let go and headed for the cabin. I watched his back receding, and even in that outfit, he looked very sexy. Kairos grew farther away, and though he did struggle a bit with each step on the snow, he kept walking straight ahead without once looking back. He left me behind, but he truly trusted me. For a moment I smiled, remembering the scene from earlier, how Eric and Lucas had faced Kairos, and how his face had turned red with jealousy, making me hold my stomach to suppress my giggles. He was so cute. That hidden jealousy made my heart race with overwhelming feelings. It was adorable. I was still smiling to myself, replaying the encounter with Eric, Lucas, and Kairos' reaction, when I heard the sound of skis approaching at high speed over the snow. The sound felt wrong, too fast, too reckless for the gentle beginner slope. I turned around quickly and was startled by a skier sliding down at full speed, out of control, and unfortunately, he was heading straight toward me. My eyes widened, but my body froze in the cold, too shocked to think, especially as he got closer. He shouted, and I couldn't utter a single sound. My voice was stuck in my throat. I could only open my mouth, my heart pounding in fear. Get out of the way, he shouted, signaling with his hand for me to move aside. I snapped back to reality and blinked, but was there still time as he closed in on me? Seraphina's POV. The man lost control, but he managed to brake at the last second. The tension was so intense that snow flew everywhere. However, it was too late. His efforts were in vain because he fell hard when his board got stuck. He rolled in front of me, with his ski equipment landing on top of him. Shocked by what had happened, I suddenly felt my knees go weak and sat down in front of him. We both sat in silence for a moment, our heavy breathing the only sound. I could only bow my head, my body trembling, unable to look at his face, as the shock in my chest still felt terrifying. But then suddenly, "What were you doing there?" he hissed, his voice sharp and accusatory. "You were blocking the slope." My mouth dropped open in disbelief, then I looked up and dared to meet his eyes. "Sorry? Did you hear me?" he continued, brushing snow off his gear with an aggressive gesture. "This is a ski trail, not a parking lot. You can't stand like an obstacle in the middle of the slope." Anger boiled up inside me, hot and sudden. This didn't make any sense. He'd come hurtling down the mountain at high speed, nearly hitting me, and now he was blaming me for his reckless skiing. "Are you serious?" I snapped back, my voice rising. "You're the one skiing like a maniac. You could have hurt someone. You could have hurt me." "Maybe if you knew how to ski properly, you'd understand slope etiquette," he replied, trying to get up from the ground. "Beginners aren't supposed to be on trails they can't handle. This is a beginner's trail," I shouted, pointing around us. "And I was standing on the safe side. You're the one who can't control your speed or see where you're going." We stared at each other, our breath coming in gasps from the mix of adrenaline and anger, but then something changed in his face. His eyes narrowed as he looked at me, and slowly recognition dawned. He raised his hand and removed his ski goggles, revealing features that made my blood run cold. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and brown eyes that had once looked at me with what I thought was love, but had turned cold and calculating when I refused to be his perfect, obedient partner. "Darius," I whispered, the name tasting bitter. A predatory smile slowly spread across his face. Well, Seraphina Luminara, what are the odds?" My heart raced, but not because of the near collision. Seeing him here, in a place that once felt like heaven, was like ice water pouring over my face. What were the odds of running into my ex-boyfriend, the man I ran away from, in the Swiss Alps? "What are you doing here?" I asked harshly, taking a step back. His smile widened, growing more arrogant. "I could ask you the same thing, though I must admit I'm flattered." He stood tall, staring at me, just like he always did when he wanted to intimidate me. "Did you come all this way to find me, darling?" The casual term of endearment made my skin crawl. "Don't call me that." "Oh, come on," he said with a mocking tone. "Don't be like that. We have a history, you and me." I felt sick. Every instinct in me screamed at me to get away from him, to find Kairos, to get as far away as possible from the man who had made my life a living hell. Without another word, I turned to leave. But Darius was faster. His hand shot out and gripped my arm. His tight hold hurt even through my ski jacket. "Don't rush," he said, his voice dropping to a low, threatening tone I knew all too well. "We need to talk." "Let go of me," I said, trying to pull away, but his grip tightened. "I have an offer for you," he continued as if I hadn't said a word. "Something that could benefit both of us. I'm not interested in anything you have to say. Listen to me," he urged, his eyes flashing with the calculating glint that always made me uneasy. "You convince your father to join my pack, and I'll consider taking you back. We can finalize the mating bond and make it official. Think about it. Power, status, everything you left behind." I stared at him in disbelief. His audacity left me speechless for a moment. Then slowly, an incredulous laugh burst from my chest. "You're crazy," I said, my voice filled with bitter mockery. "You think I'd ever, after everything you did to me, you think I'd ever crawl back to you?" His expression darkened slightly, but he continued speaking. "You're being emotional. Think practically, Seraphina. What other choice do you have? You can't run forever." "I'm not running," I said firmly. "I'm living my life. And by the way," I glared at him, "what about Vesper? Last I heard the two of you seemed very happy." For the first time since he recognized me, Darius looked uncomfortable. His jaw tightened and he glanced away. "That's complicated." "Complicated," I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's what you call cheating now? Or have you grown tired of her too?" "My relationship with Vesper has nothing to do with this," he said, but his voice wasn't convincing. "All of this is connected," I snapped. "You're still the same manipulative, selfish person you always were. Some things never change." The arrogant mask he'd been wearing finally slipped away, revealing the angry, controlling man beneath. His left hand clenched into a fist, and his eyes flashed with anger. "Watch your mouth," he hissed, raising his hand as if to strike me. Time seemed to slow down. I saw his hand coming closer, saw the anger in his eyes, and for a split second I was transported back to all the moments when his anger had consumed him, when his desire to control me had turned into physical violence. But the blow never came. A black shadow darted past me, and suddenly Darius was thrown backward through the air, his grip on my arm breaking as he crashed into a pile of snow several feet away. He lay there, stunned and groaning, while I stood frozen in shock. Kairos appeared beside me, every line of his body radiating murderous intent. His dark blue eyes were like a winter storm as he stood protectively before me, and the air around us seemed to crackle with pent-up violence. "Get up," Kairos said, his voice so cold it could freeze the mountain, "so I can take you down again." Darius struggled to rise, snow clinging to his hair and jacket. His expression was a mix of pain and disbelief. As his eyes locked on Kairos, I saw a flash of recognition on his face, followed by fear. "Kairos Harrington," Darius murmured, and there was something in his voice, a mix of respect and fear. "Darius Harlow," Kairos replied, his voice like a knife drawn from its sheath. "I should have known you'd get involved in something this stupid." The temperature around us dropped another 10 degrees as the two alphas faced off. I realized that whatever was about to happen would be far more dangerous than a mere confrontation between ex-lovers. "You still dare to show your face to Seraphina? How brave of you!" His voice trembled, causing Darius's eyes to shrink. Kailos's POV. Jealousy. That was the word that best described the feeling gnawing at my chest right now, even though every inch of me refused to admit it. The image of Seraphina talking to those two men, the way they laughed, the way they looked at her with sparkling eyes, made the primitive instinct in me want to break their necks one by one. I began to doubt everything. Did Seraphina really see me as more than just Callista's brother? Or was I just a projection of her loneliness, someone who happened to be there when she needed protection? The way those wolves swarmed around her like bees chasing honey made frustration boil up inside me. They knew nothing about her, nothing about the vulnerability hidden behind her smile, or the way her eyes flashed when she was angry. They only saw the surface, a beautiful woman with a friendly smile. "You're overthinking everything," the wolf inside me mocked lazily. "Her eyes are clearly different when she looks at you. Stop worrying like a girl in love." I growled softly, ignoring the useless comments from my wild side. But maybe he was right. Maybe I was being too paranoid. This reminded me of something more important. Seraphina was starting to let her guard down, opening up. This was the perfect moment to take the next step before she built a wall around her heart again. I knew this was the right time, a momentum I couldn't afford to miss. My decision was final. Tonight, I would officially declare my feelings and ask her to be my girlfriend. No more gray areas, no more guessing games. I wanted her to know that my feelings were serious, that she wasn't just a short-lived fling. I had planned everything perfectly. A little surprise that I hoped would make her smile. A genuine smile that she rarely showed. Not the polite smile she gave to strangers. A cozy little restaurant with a view of the mountains, candles to create a romantic atmosphere, and maybe a little wine to calm us both down. With a mix of nervousness and determination, I returned to the ski slope carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. Seraphina must have been freezing after standing outside for so long, but as I approached the spot where I had left her, the sight that greeted me made my blood boil. Darius Harlow. That jerk dared to approach Seraphina again. From their body language, I knew this wasn't a pleasant conversation. Seraphina looked tense, her hands clenched at her sides, while Darius stood too close with an intimidating posture. The way he approached Seraphina, the way he looked at her with that possessive, disgusting gaze, it all made the wolf inside me howl with rage. "It seems the last lesson wasn't enough for that fool," the wolf inside me growled, and for once, we agreed. Without hesitation, I moved. My steps were quick and decisive, leaving the 2 cups of hot chocolate on the nearest table. What mattered now was getting Darius away from Seraphina before the situation escalated. Anger flowed through my veins like an uncontrollable fire. Seeing Darius's hand almost touch Seraphina, almost hurt her, made the wolf inside me roar with primitive, dangerous rage. I lunged at Darius with all my fury. "Get up," I said, "so I can beat you again." Darius tried to get up, snow sticking to his hair and jacket. His expression was a mixture of pain and disbelief. "Kairos Harrington," whispered Darius, and there was something in his voice, a mixture of respect and fear. "Darius Harlow," I replied. "I should have known you'd get involved in something this stupid." The air around me felt hotter, even though it was freezing cold. "You still dare to show your face in front of Seraphina? How dare you?" My voice trembled, causing Darius's eyes to narrow. "If you dare touch her again," I said in a voice so cold that the air around us seemed to freeze, "I'll make sure you'll never be able to use that hand again." Darius was still lying in the pile of snow, grimacing in pain. His eyes shifted between me and Seraphina, and I could see the cunning calculation spinning behind his gaze. "This isn't your concern, Kairos," he said, trying to get up, his voice trembling between anger and fear. I took a step forward, and he immediately stepped back. Good. He still remembered the last lesson I had given him. "Anything involving Seraphina is my business," I replied firmly. "And if your little brain can still think clearly, You'll remember what happened the last time you tried to hurt her." Seraphina moved beside me, and I could feel her body trembling, not from the cold, but from shock and fear. Without thinking, I reached out and placed my hand on her lower back, offering comfort and protection. "I'm not afraid of you," Darius tried to say bravely, but his voice betrayed his lack of conviction. My wolf sneered in my mind. "He's afraid. I can smell his fear from here." "Good," I replied in my heart. "He should be afraid." "You should be afraid," I said loudly, letting a little of my alpha aura leak out. The air around us trembled with pent-up power. "Because this time, if you dare to approach Seraphina again, I won't be as kind as I was before." Darius's eyes widened, and he took another step back. I knew he remembered how I had almost crushed his jaw during our last encounter. That time I had held back. This time would be different. "Go," I ordered in a voice that brooked no argument. "Now, and never come near Seraphina again." Darius glanced at Seraphina once more, as if wanting to say something, but my icy stare made him think better of it. He grabbed his ski gear awkwardly and hurriedly, then slid down the slope without looking back. I waited until he was completely out of sight before finally exhaling and turning back to Seraphina. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice softening dramatically from the threatening tone I had just used. She nodded, but I could see her hands were still shaking. "Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming." My wolf was right, I thought, watching the way her eyes looked at me with gratitude, relief, and something deeper that made my heart race. The way she looked at me was different, very different. "I'll always come for you," I said without thinking, and the words came out with a sincerity that surprised even me. Her cheeks flushed and she lowered her head. "Kairos, don't think about him anymore," I cut in softly. "Darius is nobody. What matters is that you're safe now." My wolf murmured contentedly in my mind. "See? She needs us. She feels safe with you. Stop doubting her." And for the first time today, I agreed completely with my wolf. Seraphina didn't see me as Callista's brother. The way she reacted to my touch, the way she sought protection by my side, this wasn't the reaction of someone who saw me as a brother. "Let's go back," I said, holding out my hand. "I have something I want to show you later tonight." She stared at my hand for a moment before taking it, and the warm touch of her fingers made something inside me swell with an almost unbearable feeling. Tonight, I thought as we glided down together. Tonight I'd tell her how I really felt. My wolf howled with joy in my mind, and I couldn't help but smile. After all the doubts and fears of today, I was finally certain of my decision. Seraphina would be mine, and after the surprise I had prepared for tonight, I was sure she would feel the same way. "Kairos?" Her soft voice caught my attention. "Yes?" "What are you going to show me tonight?" I glanced at her with a mysterious smile. "It's a surprise, but I promise you'll like it. More than just like, I hoped in my heart. I hoped this would change everything between us." As we glided down the snow-covered slope, with the cold wind sweeping across our faces and the sun beginning to set behind the mountain peaks, I felt something I had never felt before, a pure and unshakable hope for the future we could build together.